We are live. Welcome to a new episode of All Things Xbox podcast. Once again, I've got Logan with me. Logan, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Jamie. I'm cool, calm, and collected, and watching a whole bunch of timeline meltdown. How about you, man? How are you doing?
I was in a very good mood today because I don't really open up Twitter until about 4 or 5 p.m. So I had no idea what was going on until a few people let me know on Twitter, which we'll obviously going to be talking about later because I haven't really been able to get up my full, impression of the situation. But other than that, it's actually been a good week. The gaming industry's been a very weird place because you have the whole Helldivers situation. You have people on PC saying their part, which makes sense. You have multiple different publishers like literally closing down studios and cancelling games. But outside of that, we have a lot of topics to talk about. Logan, before we get into all the topics, have you been playing anything interesting this past week?
Yeah, I played Return to Grace, which you had recommended.
Oh yeah.
You've always posted about it and the easy achievements and stuff, and I thought after I beat Bolt Gun, I was like, I'm feeling something a little more chill
Yeah.
and a little less frantic and Doom Eternal like. So I checked it out and I beat it in a setting. It was fantastic. Love it. Highly recommended. A very philosophical and sci fi exploration vibes walking sim type game with lots of fun pop culture references. Like I saw lots of Star Wars references and teases in both achievement names and some encounters and dialogue. And it was really good. And picked up some games on the horror sale that they had, and just looking forward to Hellblade 2 soon. How about you, man? What you been up to?
A weird bunch of games. I bought Tomb Raider Anniversary, the 360 game,
Very good.
for £2.41p. So great deal there. It's 2000s Tomb Raider. It's fun times. It's over the top stuff. It's basically a remake of the first game, but they essentially take the best levels because Square Enix wouldn't actually give them the full budget to do the whole game. So it's just a collection of the best parts of the original Tomb Raider. But that's fun. Been playing Avatar again. That game doesn't end. Lost Judgment, phenomenal game. I think it's on sale on Xbox Live at the minute as well as the first game, which is I think it's on sale for £10, and I gave that game a 9.5 out of 10. Incredible game. It's set in the Yakuza universe, but it's basically for anyone. You don't really have to have played any of the other Yakuza games. And Harold Halibut, that indie game launched in Xbox Game Pass, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. It's a sci-fi adventure game, and they've been making this game for I think 11 years, and the whole game is made via stop motion, and it's really incredible what they've done. It's a shame to say some media outlets gave it some lower review scores because they clearly don't get the humor. It's a very, very British style humor, but great game. I'm now on to chapter, I think, 5. But it's a really good story game. Very chill. It's basically a modern day version of a point and click game, which I really like. Dragon's Dogma 2, again, people need to play that game. And one of my most proudest moments this past week, as someone that does not play multiplayer, one of my friends who I play Call of Duty with every week, I'm determined this year to get a Warzone win. I'm absolutely terrible at Call of Duty now. Back in the day, I was a force to be reckoned with. Now, so bad that my KD ratio is just abysmal. Anyway, there's a new mode called Warzone Resurgence, and basically you can spawn while other members of your team are alive, which is really cool for a battle royale mode. And I got my first win. So yeah, very nice. But outside of that, I've been playing just a bunch of indie games. Like, there's been a lot of cool stuff coming out. A lot of cool stuff on Xbox Game Pass. I know you said, Logan, you've been playing Return to Grace. That launched in Game Pass as well. It's got a ton of easy achievements in that game. So if people want to do their daily achievement thing to get the Microsoft reward points, that is a hell of an easy game to get every achievement in a single setting. In fact, you can actually copy your saves so you can get the alternate endings, which is pretty cool. And it's got a really cool story. And that game is also hitting towards a sequel, so who knows what'll happen there. Anyway, we've got a lot to go over today. Let's get into it. Before we get into all the topics, really, I want to say that there's been a lot of animosity today online over people's reactions to the news and stuff. And, as people know, I'm a very relaxed person. I'm a very calm person. So, like, my reactions to this aren't as vitriol as I've seen a lot of people online. Like, I think the gaming space, people can take gaming news, be it good or bad, and even if it's different variations of bad, people just go like really harsh online, name calling, stalking even over just opinions. It's like it's just gaming at the end of the day, and I don't know. Like Logan, you have to admit the past 8 hours have been absolutely pandemonium online. Like nobody seems to be civil.
Yeah, you can't even use the right words on
No.
a YouTube broadcast to describe it. It's been ridiculous. We'll just put it that way. It's just insanity because like I thought we had finally gotten past this collectively to where after all the drama and the fallout, pun not intended, of all the ports to other consoles, or are they going third party or not, or what's the plan, all these leaks and management changes and all this stuff. I thought we had finally gotten past that. We had taken a deep breath. We had moved on as a community. They had steadied the ship. There was an exciting new showcase coming up, which we'll discuss. And it felt like things were in a really good place. And then, lo and behold, on a random Tuesday, May 7th, they drop that they're shuttering 4 studios. And it was a doozy. And a lot of people just kind of just went back into the trained path they had been on for the other stuff. And it resurrected a lot of angry feelings and mistrust, and it deepened the wounds for some people. And then some people are like, you know what, I've had enough. All kinds of stuff. We'll dive into it further when we talk further about it, but just basically it's just been a giant cluster cluck online. And honestly, it makes you want to just take a step back sometimes.
Yeah. And I apologize for the police car going past. Like people online have been very reactionary, but the thing is, this type of story that's going around at the minute, which we'll be talking about later in the show, it's a very easy way for people to get likes on Twitter. You maybe run with this, maybe push it a certain way. Like there's people that are grifting this story like mad, like trying to spin it in the most negative possible way. Excuse me. There's people calling for boycotts, and it's silly. But again, we'll be talking about that later in the show. Now, with everything going on, do you know there was a game cancellation today that has nothing to do with Microsoft? I know, shocker. Nobody's talking about it. Well, here we go. So Remedy have like 8 games in development, but one of which being Project Kestrel. That got completely cancelled as of yesterday, which is a bit of a shame because Remedy, they put out great games. They really do. So as of now, they are now developing Control 2, Alan Wake 2 DLC, Max Payne 1 and 2 Remake, and the Control spin-off, which is going to be a co-op game. So they have a lot of games in development, but apparently the Project Kestrel that has fully been cancelled was a live service game. Now, I think maybe they made the right move. um, they they clearly spread themselves way too thin, in my opinion. They are a very small studio. They put out really good quality games, but like I don't see why we need to get 7 games from them. Logan, what's your thought on that? Because nobody's really talked about this today.
Yeah, the Project Kestrel cancellation is a bummer. Like, I love Remedy. They're one of my hands down favorite studios out there. Like, I have yet to play a Remedy game I did not thoroughly just love and adore. But this one did seem a bit out of their wheelhouse to begin with, like a more multiplayer focused. So, to me, I think it's better that they can it now before it gets further in development and allow more of their resources and team to focus on, Alan Wake 2 expansions and the Control 2 sequel and the Max Payne 1 and 2 remake and like other stuff. Like they have a whole deck of cards of projects they got to work on right now. So it makes sense. It's always kind of sad to see a game get canceled, but I think if you had to pick from their lineup of ones you'd rather lose out on to get the others, that's the one you'd pick.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hype over the Max Payne games because Max Payne's brilliant. Like, I think if anyone's listening to this, especially if you've been playing Xbox for a long time, the chances are you've played Max Payne back in the day, and like those games, I think are going to do really well. And plus, those games are also going to have the Rockstar Games logo on the box, so I think that alone, it's going to sell really well because people will just buy anything now if it has the Rockstar logo on it, which is cool. But yeah, I think you're right. Spreading themselves way too thin, and the live service game just doesn't really suit Remedy. They make really good, like story focused games, and let's be honest, do we really need yet another live service game? When 90% of these like all these live service games that come out, they die within like 6 months. Like nobody's playing them. If you go on Game Pass, and I keep using Game Pass as an example because it makes sense, but like Game Pass is filled to the brim with single player content. None of these little live service games that nobody's ever heard of last longer than 6 months. Last year we had, I think there was like 8 live service games shut down within the space of a week. So, eh. Honestly, nothing of value was lost. Control 2, I'm sure it's going to be great. The Control spin off, I'm sure that'll be great. But, the Alan Wake DLC is meant to be pretty big. So, hey, it is what it is. But, it's just another Remedy game that's being cancelled. What I would have loved to have seen Remedy come out with a massive successful hit where they can just like continuously get money from it because Remedy make great games, but they just don't sell for some reason. I know
It's
people.
insanity.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I know people were telling us last week, which I forgot. Alan Wake 2 was exclusive to the Epic Game Store, and that's going to be the case up until I think October. So, like, hopefully they can recoup some money back when the game goes to Steam later this year and the expansions. But I don't know, Logan. Do you think Alan Wake 2 not having a physical edition hurt it at all?
I'd be remiss to say it probably didn't hurt. I mean, it probably did hurt it a little bit. I mean, as we've seen from numbers and stuff, like less and less people are buying physical. It's like astronomically low percentage, but it is people. There are people buying these. You go in a game store or a Target, Walmart, wherever that has games up till whenever they stop selling them. Like, they would have seen it and some people would have bought it. So, yeah, I do think it would have propped the numbers up a little bit. Not a lot, but maybe enough to get it to that margin they were looking for. But I do think the biggest thing for them is Steam. I think as soon as that sucker hits Steam, it is going to go boom. And it will do very well on Steam. And especially if you can have mod support. Like, man, you could totally imagine like people modding in Resident Evil stuff or Dino Crisis or all kinds of, other horror genre icons into it. True Detective stuff or Twin Peaks stuff, like, yeah, I think it's gonna do gangbusters on Steam.
Yeah, I think that we want to pay attention to like horror games do pop off on Steam, so it's yeah. Hopefully, it will get its second chance later this year. And if people haven't played it, I highly recommend it. It's one of the 6 games I gave a 10 out of 10, like ever, which is big, you know. Anyway, we'll move on. So now, some bad news that really hurt me today, and I literally just found out before the show went live. Splinter Cell. We used to get these games back in the day called Splinter Cell, and they were great. There were these amazing stealth games, and then we get Splinter Cell Blacklist in 2013. Incredible game. Had a different voice actor for a few different reasons, but all in all, it was an amazing Splinter Cell game with arguably the best missions in the entire franchise. And that's it. That's all we've had the past decade. Which it hurts my feelings. Not gonna lie, it hurts my feelings. But anyway, I just found out about an hour ago that the director of the Splinter Cell remake, which has been in development for like 4 years now, has left Ubisoft. Yeah, that stings. I'm not gonna lie. People have been wondering where's this remake for years now. We got concept art, what, 2.5 years ago. We got a teaser trailer, which was just Sam Fisher pulling down the goggles. I think it was 2 years ago as well. But like this remake just seems to be nowhere at the minute. I do think it's going to be revealed in June with the Ubisoft showcase, but Ubisoft games are in a weird place at the minute because apparently the Prince of Persia remake is going through a completely different development phase at the minute with a different team and different assets and everything. So like, the game we saw 3 years ago isn't going to be the game we get. Like Logan, it's a bit weird that Ubisoft like the I'm actually bothered by this. By the way, they actually got rid of their creative director or the game director before the game's even been shown off.
Yeah, that does not bode well for development. That kind of reminds me a little bit of the Nazi Old Republic remake that is in development hell right now, where basically they showed it off the brass at Disney, Sony, wherever, and then they're like, "Oh my gosh, what is this?" And then like a whole bunch of people get canned, and like basically they shift to a different studio and everything like that. So the whole creative director leaving is not a good sign. I'm already kind of paranoid anyway when it comes to Ubisoft development, and the whole Prince of Persia thing has been a cluster as well. Like going from the reveal trailer, which looked like a janky OG Xbox game, to um now like, okay, you guys didn't like the look and we rebooted it. Now we're gonna reboot it again, and now we're gonna go actually more realistic and have a different team work on it and stuff like that. I hope they get it right, but they're very much in a prove it stage to me.
Yeah, and if you go back like 10 years ago, I would say they were probably the best third-party publisher. They came out with Assassin's Creed 4, the pirate game, as Far Cry 3, which blew everyone away. Like that game basically sold in the UK just from word of mouth. Like it had next to no market in the UK, and it was number one. And because that's all people were talking about, how amazing Far Cry 3 was. Splinter Cell Blacklist, they were coming out with Rayman Origins and then hyping up Rayman Legends. They had a bunch of like smaller indie style games. Rainbow Six was in a really good place then, and it's just like we just want more variety from them. And we these remakes, they look really cool. Or at least the idea of them sounds really cool. And like you said, like Prince of Persia, the remake looks like an OG Xbox game, because it does. Like, and that's meant to be a built from the ground up remake. I do think maybe people are getting a bit sick and tired of remakes. Last generation, the first 4 years, I'd say, of last generation, we were getting remasters almost announced every single week. And people got really sick of the remasters. But it kind of made sense last generation because we had no backwards compatibility when these consoles launched. So like now, these developers and publishers are looking at these games that are 10 plus years old, not even 10 years in some cases, and they're just like, okay, we'll make a remake. Sometimes it's not built up from the ground, and it's like the same game. I don't know, like, Logan, do you think people are getting sick of remakes because we quote unquote halfway through the generation and people are still itching for new experiences?
It's a good question. Like, not to be a cop out answer, but it's one I can legitimately see both angles on. Like, on one hand, it's like, oh my gosh, grow a creative spine and make something different and new and be bold. Don't just go, we are creatively bankrupt, so let's go back to this idea we have and just, flesh it out, put on a new coat of paint, slap a $70 sticker on it and, you know, um, con these suckers out of some more money. Like, on one hand, I see that element. On another hand, some of these games, like, I don't think all remakes are equal. By far, not all remakes are the same or equal. Some are literally just a slight glow up and a little bit of change of paint, or maybe a slight tweak of controls, and then you flash that $70 sticker on it and you ship it out there, and it's like, really? You want me to pay for this? This is essentially the same thing, just you putting it on a different, case or box and, charging me again for it. On the other hand, like the Dead Space remake or the Resident Evil remakes they've done, there are some that completely revitalize games and are like, wow, this is truly enhancing, fantastic, adds to the experience, creates the grand thing we loved from the past and makes it even better than what we remembered. Or like Night Dive Studios, who I will forever champion. Night Dive, Blue Point, guys like that, who do reach into the vaults of history and pull out early 90s or later or even 80s type games and resurrect them, modernize control, and make them port them to consoles and stuff that people wouldn't have been able to experience before. A bunch of them cult hits that, frankly, I had never even heard of, and just do a great job of that. Charge a reasonable price on top of that. Like, to me, there's a big difference. Like, I am sick of frankly, like, The Last of Us. Like, that was a shameful remake, in my opinion. Especially when you had just bloody remastered it for PS4. So you took a PS3 game, like a year or two later, you bump it out again for PS4, and then the next generation, it's like, well, we got the PS5 tech now. Might as well remake it, quote unquote, and then put it out for PS5 to coincide with the show. So, to me, that would have been like, sorry, this is long winded, but it would have been like essentially if Bethesda had just put out Fallout 3 again or Fallout 4 again without any noticeable changes or anything, just to coincide with the show, but call it a remaster remake. Like, either remaster or remake it, or just leave it alone and make them backwards compatible, because the other is just, it's money grabbing.
Yeah, and we've talked about in the past how like not all games need remake. Like my personal stance is that games from the seventh generation don't need remakes, outside of a few. My go-to for this is Dragon Age Origins. Like that,
Oh, it looks horrible.
yeah, Dragon Age Origins looked dated the day it came out because people are like, oh wow, the developers of Mass Effect are making this fantasy RPG. Great. And then when the game came out, people were like, why does it look like it's 5 year old? Like, and I enjoy Dragon Age Origins, but that game visually is awful. Like, what a step back from Mass Effect. I don't know what they were
It's an
thinking.
OG Xbox 360 game.
It basically is, but it came out in what 2009, so it's like
Yeah.
it was bad. Like they went from that to Mass Effect 2, mind blowing. I think the Elder Scrolls Oblivion that could do with a remake. You load up that game now and uh, basically grass in that game is just that green texture on the ground you used to get. You know,
On the orcs or something else, man.
yeah, like that game visually is a bit, it's a bit rough around the edges. But outside of a few games like that, I think remasters would do the trick. Anyway, before we continue, we have the first super chat of the day. Thank you very much by Nick W for $5. He says the best remakes of Resident Evil remakes and Metroid Prime. Haven't gotten the chance to play Metroid Prime, but like Resident Evil 2 remake, like that is pretty much the gold standard. Like,
It's
did it?
incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible. Did it kick my ass? Yes, but that game, like when you're first walking through that main corridor in the police station, you rotate the zombie's head and his jaw like loosens. Like I was blown away by that. Just the detail alone, and they were faithful to the original. So it was still new, but man, like I know you mentioned The Last of Us not being much of a remake, and there's a few other games that have kind of done the same thing. They just list them as a remake, but like Resident Evil 2 and 3, like that should tell like developers and studios like that's what we want. Like that is a remake. It's worthy of the name. In fact, Resident Evil 2 remake isn't even called remake. It's just called Resident Evil 2. And if people haven't played that, play it. It will kick you behind if you're not careful. But yeah, great game. And thank you very much for the $5 Nick W. Metroid Prime, I think a lot of people loved that as well because it was pretty much very faithful to the original from what I saw. And how do you mess up Metroid? I think Nintendo. Do you know what's funny? We're going to be talking about all these like quote unquote controversial game topics later on. Nintendo's sitting there in the sidelines, like not having any issues. They selling games physically. They having a high return on physical games. They can put out these tiny little games that maybe cost a few $1,000,000 to make, and they'll sell like 10 million copies. You never hear of Nintendo studios shutting down because why would they? Nintendo's Nintendo. They can put out a new console with anemic online support, and it'll be one of the best-selling consoles of all time. That's Nintendo. I think Microsoft and Sony they would love to have that sort of just control and fan base because the Nintendo fan base they buy their games, like they buy their games. The consoles that sell ridiculous. Anyway, topic for another day. Let's continue. So this just
Quick thing. Oh, if I can,
yeah.
I just saw a post like how last time we had talked about how Spyro had the collection had been recently uploaded for PC Game Store and like maybe there was some context that it was going to be hitting Game Pass soon and stuff like that. Well, from our friend Idle Sloth, it looks like the Crash Insane trilogy has now been uploaded to PC Game Store, or there's like a posting or a placeholder or whatever. So it definitely does seem like they are gearing up for a big drop of Activision stuff.
yeah. Funny you mentioned that. That was the topic we are going to go into next. It's like
Awesome,
yeah,
great minds.
yeah. So this is great news. Like, is it official? Not really, but like if you don't have the Insane trilogy, which came out, I think in 2017, and it's finally making its way to the Windows Store. Yeah, it's definitely coming to Game Pass soon. That and Spyro. If we ever see something like I don't know, the Transformers games relisted all of a sudden, and on the Microsoft Store, people will hear me do backflips. It's a good sign. I think people have really been waiting for this big Activision Blizzard like Game Pass batch, and I think it's pretty much all but confirmed at this point that their big Game Pass drop is going to be happening at their summer showcase. Like, I don't think that's really a spoiler for anyone. It's blatantly going to happen at this point. But I think that's great news. More people to play these games. The Insane trilogy is excruciatingly hard. It makes you realize games in the 90s weren't so easy to play.
They took no prisoners.
Yeah, like those Crash Bandicoot games were tough. Great games, but like no hand holding at all. If you mess up, you will go back to the beginning of the game if you lose your lives. But hey, great news. It looks like it's coming, and we're only a month away from the Xbox game showcase, which is really cool. But hey, more games coming. Logan, do you think it's pretty much all but confirmed that'll be happening at the showcase?
I would say that I would be absolutely shocked if it's not at the showcase. Or, with a slight little caveat sidestep, maybe right before, right after, if for some reason they want it to be a separate thing to focus on new titles, and then like they'll reveal that before or after. But I think it is imminent. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. And like you said, it might not be during the show. It could be before, after. But hey, it's good news. It looks like it's happening. It will be interesting to see though. Will Microsoft have been able to relicense any of those games? I think
You would think so.
yeah, I think you can cross off the Spider-Man games because that's a weird situation with those licenses. But like Activision's 360 games alone, they had a lot of cool games back then. There's the Wolverine game, which I mean, honestly, I don't know if that'll happen. I think there was something in Sony's documents that were leaked that uh, Xbox games can't be backwards compatible if they about certain Marvel characters. It's silly, but hey, we might say Transformers and all that stuff. It's all good. Anyway, we'll move on. Oh, and since we were just talking about Resident Evil 9 looks like it's actually going to be announced in June and released in May. Now, I think a lot of people are going to be hyped about that. I told one of my friends about that. He was ecstatic. But it looks like the new Resident Evil game is actually going to be open world. And it's been in development since the beginning of Resident Evil 8 development. So this is the Resident Evil game with the longest development cycle. I think it could work. Resident Evil is in an open world game. Can be a bit of a scary, aspect because like I think if a game all of a sudden or a franchise all of a sudden goes open world, you might just fill the world out with some samey stuff, some repetitive content. And I always talk about game bloat. A lot of games have bloat, and like if they get Resident Evil right, it could be really good. Like Logan, do you think Resident Evil 9 as an open world game could actually work?
I think it could theoretically work, but again, it kind of like you risk the Ubisoft conundrum. Like open world games in theory sound great. Like, wow, I can play as this character, I can explore all these open areas and, run off to this village over here or climb this mountain in the distance or, go into this mine and stuff like that. And I think Resident Evil Village did a good job of kind of dabbling their toes in that idea. And, Village was incredible. I absolutely loved it. Resident Evil 7 was great. Like I'm a big Resident Evil guy, so I I'm all for it, but I do hope they don't flesh it out with too many quote fetchy kind of quests or just collectible hunts. Like if you're gonna go fully open world, like make it a living or I guess undead world. Don't. make it where it's like, okay, all these buildings are the same, except there's a red Potter vase in this one, and there's a zombie dog in that one, and there's, ever so often I'll find a key or a treasure in this one, and it's just rinse and repeat. Like, as long as they don't do that, I feel good about it.
Yeah, I think it could end up being really good. And Capcom seems to be on a really good roll over the past few years. They are a force to be reckoned with when it comes to their games. Like Monster Hunter pops off like better than anything at the minute. Resident Evil's back. Like Capcom, about 10 years ago, they were going to go bankrupt. Like they weren't putting out big games after Resident Evil 6 came out, and it looked like they were going to close down. And like the success they've had since 2016 or 15, like just success after success after success. So it's good to see that they actually at least experimenting when it comes to the Resident Evil formula, because I don't think anyone was really asking it to be open world, but it's good to mix things up a bit, especially considering they may be putting out a new Resident Evil game. It looks like every year, maybe. We had the Resident Evil 4 remake last year, and then before that it was Resident Evil 8. So, hey, more games for everyone. It's a win-win. Now, man, we have way too many topics. You know what? We'll wait a bit before we talk about that stuff. I think, yeah. So, this is going to be a long topic, so I may as well start talking about it now. Tango Gameworks, ZeniMax. So it came out today that, and I believe it was Nick W in chat that let me know about this. Microsoft is closing down 4 studios. Now, one of the teams being Arcane, the developers behind Redfall. There's basically 2 mobile studios shutting down, one of which has been they're moving all the developers to a different studio, which is really good. And like absolute pandemonium, people losing the marbles. But before we get into all the reactions and stuff, I just want to get my opinion out of the way about it. It's not good. People losing their jobs is never good. It never is. It doesn't matter over what reason at all. It's never good. These studios have put out, some good games, some mixed games, and let's be honest, like when it came to Redfall last year, there was a huge negative reaction to it, like absolutely negative, and it all stemmed from the frame rate. People weren't talking about the vampires, people weren't talking about the game world or the gameplay loop. People were fixated on a frame rate for a game they hadn't played yet. And like all the stories last year before the game came out, it wasn't that is the game an immersive sim? How many players co-op is it? Is it a good campaign? Nobody was talking about that. People were just talking about this frame rate. And it's this weird thing that stemmed off last year and maybe a little bit the year before, where for the first 2 years of this generation, first 3 years of this generation even, every game we had basically on Xbox Series X and PlayStation was 60 frames. Like, without fail, everything was 60. And then we got Gotham Knights, and I keep forgetting that game with the rats. Logan, what's that game with the rats called? I always forget the name.
Dishonored?
No, the Plague Tale.
Plague Tale?
Yeah,
Okay.
A Plague Tale Requiem. That was 30, but they have like 300,000 rats on screen at some points in that game. And by the way, that game does actually support 60 frames now. But like people had this really like negative feeling from all these games being 30 all of a sudden, and that's where like people start talking about pro consoles because developers just needed to optimize more. But anyway, Redfall comes out. It's not the immersive sim people were talking about, because that's what Arcane does, immersive sims. And like again, people were just fixated on this bloody resolution. So like people were automatically hating Redfall before they even played it just because of the FPS, which to me was a bit ridiculous. Like people's reaction over a frame rate, I think maybe, and I know Logan feels the same way. Like playing the game at 60 is preferable to me. However, if it's 30, some people in the media don't like it when I say this. It's not the end of the world for me. I played Jedi Survivor at 30 frames per second by choice. I played Alan Wake 2 at 30 frames per second by choice. People will hate the fact that I've said that. But hey, it is what it is. But anyway, people were freaking out about that. And Redfall, for all intents and purposes, commercially and as we know critically, was a failure. Even no matter how good that game could have turned out to be, the reaction to frame rate alone destroyed that game. No matter how good it would have been, people would have destroyed that game. Well, anyway, skip forward to now. The studios are closing down, and I'm seeing people that have torn Redfall apart. People that have hated on Redfall since it released and now crying online that these studios are getting shut down. Where was the love for those studios then? Where was the love for all these articles pushing the whole Redfall is crap game, all that stuff? Why are they all of a sudden loving Arcane? It makes no sense. And let's talk about Tango. I've been praising Tango for a long time for being one of Microsoft's best studios with the variety of games they can come out with. You know, they can make horror games like The Evil Within 1 and 2. They can make open world magic games like Ghostwire Tokyo, which is a weird genre in itself. And Hi-Fi Rush was such an experimental game, especially for them. And it bloody worked. It just worked so well to the point where people attach themselves to the characters, and then you go on Twitter now, and there's people with Hi-Fi Rush characters as their profile pictures, and they love those games, and they want more merch and stuff. I'm one of those people that want more merch, and shutting down that studio, I think I know why they did. That hurts. I think that hurts a lot of gamers. You know, it's sad to see all the developers lose jobs, especially considering how passionate we're. Arcane, I understand the why. The developer behind, I think, Elder Scrolls Blades, I understand the why. That game was in development for years, and I never heard anyone talk. Logan, have you heard anyone talk about Elder Scrolls Blades on mobile?
Literally the only time I heard about it was when it was announced at that E3 and when they were acquired and it was mentioning all the stuff that they've done. That was the last I ever heard of that.
And you know, mobile games are getting better and better, but I never heard anyone talk about as Elder Scrolls is one of the biggest intellectual properties in gaming, and nobody talks about the mobile game. That says it all, you know. So that it actually makes sense. But Tango Gameworks stings, and I think it's because Ghostwire Tokyo cost a lot of money to make. It maybe didn't recoup its costs. Hi-Fi Rush, honestly, I think Hi-Fi Rush is an incredible game. I don't think it should have been shadow dropped. I've said this multiple times over the past year. I think they should have announced that at the Game Awards and then released it in the January when they originally did. They could have had a brand new successful IP with that game. And remember, before we continue, I have another super chat by Nick W. Thank you very much for $10. He says, "What sucks about Tango Gameworks is that this was this was Xbox only Japanese studio, and they wanted to invest more in Japan." You hit the nail on the head there, because Phil Spencer has said time and time again, we want to invest more in Japan. We need more Japan studios, and they've had Tango right there, with so much talent. And then this happens. And, you know, there's always weird reasons as to why these studios get shut down. And people are online right now, on Twitter, losing their marbles, saying they're going to boycott Xbox and Game Pass because of these decisions. It's congratulations, you've played yourself. You're going to put more developers out of work by doing stuff like that. Boycotts in gaming just doesn't work like that. The thing with Helldivers 2, that made sense because of the whole login situation. But like boycotting. It just doesn't make sense if you say it out loud. Boycotting a developer because because they sacked some developers, which would lead to more developers being sacked. It makes no sense. It's a dumb way of thinking about it. Anyway, like what Nick W said, Microsoft needs more Japanese studios. They get less Japanese content than the other consoles because they are the Western console. So like they needed them. Like they could have. We've seen the wide variety of genres that Tango can make. Like they could have made JRPGs for Xbox. They could have. They could have made Persona style games with hi-fi rush characters or anything, and then this happens, and like it's the biggest loss out of all the studios Microsoft's shut down over the past decade, which isn't many. This is probably the biggest one for me, at least. Logan, before we talk about all the whys and stuff, like, what do you think of the whole situation? Because it's unfortunate to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts kind of pretty similar to yours, echo yours quite a bit, but like to be blunt, like, you know, obviously I was pretty mad. I was pretty angry, upset about it. I nobody wants to see talented studios get shuttered, especially studios that have made some of my favorite games like Arcane Austin or, a talented, felt like up and coming, like really unique and different studio like Tango Gameworks, who's in Japan, which, you know, they've needed a studio there forever, have talked about wanting a studio there forever. You finally have one. You have one, and it's a talented, good one. And then you shut it down. It That one to me is the most egregious, like the biggest upset to me. Like I love Arcane Austin and I love their history. But, in this business and some other businesses, putting on my cold corporate hat, not my Xbox fan hat, like, look, you have to, produce and make good games that, reach certain criteria for selling or um helping the brand or outreach or, engagement, critical reception, whatever. Redfall was basically not it in pretty much all of the above, if not more. It was disastrous. So for that to be their final game is really disappointing and heartbreaking. But that one I understand from a corporate standpoint. Like, look, this game was a studio killer. It was it was like Anthem, but Anthem Bioware was able to you know nine lives it like a cat and get out of that. But this was really really bad for the studio, and it they weigh the cost and they're like, well, we still have Arcane and Leon, which is another half of the studio. We're not closing down all of Arcane. We're closing down the Austin branch, and they're apparently relocating some of the workers to other ZeniMax studios. And I don't know about the rest, but it's a bummer. But I understand that one. Roundhouse. Okay, they were originally Human Head, who had worked on the original Prey, not the reboot, but the original one. And then they were acquired by Bethesda under a new name, Roundhouse. And they had been a support studio basically. So instead of them just being a separate support studio, they basically have merged them with ZeniMax Online. Okay, that makes sense to me logically. Like a smaller support studio, you don't want the overhead of support, yet what's a studio that's not too far away that really needs more, bandwidth and support? ZeniMax Online is doing well. We'll bump you over there. So at least they keep their jobs. I mean, it's different, but that makes sense to me. Alpha Dog Gaming was a bummer because I enjoyed Mighty Doom. I thought it was a lot of fun. I actually played it daily for a while, but like that one is a little head scratching because you talk about how ABK was so massive for mobile. We need mobile this, we need mobile that. You have a mobile studio and now you're axing it. Was this simply like the numbers just weren't hitting a certain threshold, and now that we have ABK, we don't need the smaller Canadian outpost studio that's far away from the other ones, that's a mobile only studio, or what? It's a bummer, and I think it's a little confusing, but I can kind of understand it. But yeah, going back to all of it, just Tango is the one that really, really bothers me the most. And I just, I really wonder if they're gonna, in a few years go back and go, man, we really shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible situation. Before I continue with the topic, I have to do these little ads because it helps the channel out. If you enjoy the channel, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps when you like the content, especially live streams and stuff. It helps push the algorithm. And I'm British, so I'm really bad at self-promoting myself, obviously. And if you want to support the channel with super chats or want anything answered, it's very much appreciated and helps the channel grow. Anyway, so if you go back to, I think 2015, when Lionhead was shut down. Now, Lionhead, they were basically bleeding money. They had a game, or should I say, they didn't put out a game for about 5 years or something, and they were working on Fable Legends, and there was no release date in sight for Fable Legends. And by the way, I played Fable Legends. I think enough time has passed that I can talk about it. I think, screw it. It wasn't fun. It was not fun. So like Lionhead were basically bleeding money for Microsoft, and like Fable Legends, I'll say this, was absolutely gorgeous. Like there's no game at the time that looked like Fable Legends, but it just wasn't fun at all. Like Logan, did you get into the closed beta for Fable Legends at all?
No, I didn't. In hindsight, I wish I could have tried it, but no, I didn't.
I mean, that was it was a nice idea they had, and that was back when these developers were trying to get the whole 4v1 thing, which they were doing a lot at the beginning of last generation. Basically, every publisher was doing that for some reason, and they shut them down. And people know why, because it wasn't working out for them. And I'm thinking, like, maybe the projections for their studios that they had games in development, maybe they weren't going to have games out for a long time. Maybe focus testing didn't go that well for them. Um, like you said, like the mobile studios, I get that. Arcane, I get that because of the way Redfall was received. But like Tango, like that one stings. That one stings. Like Microsoft need more Japanese developers, and like that was their entry point. Like they could have made anything for them. Ever since Lost Odyssey came out on 360, people have been clamoring for Microsoft to have more Japanese studios, have more Japanese exclusives, and it's like this hurts them a bit. And before we continue, I'll say this: people have overreacted online, like I think they do with everything. Say it's the end of the world, the sky is falling. It's like no. It's like developers have lost their jobs, and while you have people crying online saying they're done with Xbox and stuff, it's like people are out of work. Microsoft's going to be fine at the end of the day. Like Phil Spencer and Matt Booty and Sarah Bond probably had nothing to do with this. Again, it's all bean counter stuff. And people like to say that Microsoft, they're a $3 trillion company and they clearly have infinite money. The truth is, no matter how much money Microsoft, Sony, or Nintendo have, they can't really put all that money into gaming. The what $70 billion that was spent on Activision, that's money that they basically had to spend because it would get taxed. It's basically it was costing Microsoft money just by them having that money there. That's why you see a lot of these companies buy up like big corporations and stuff. It could be a tax write-off. It can be a bunch of other different things. But like, it's spending money can also save money for these companies. I'm not saying that's why Microsoft bought Activision, but them buying Activision clearly works out in the end. But the whole Bethesda thing, it's a mess. And anyway, while Logan was talking, I was looking online that I think the main reason, and I think I figured this all out, people losing their marbles online saying this is the end of Microsoft, this is the end of Xbox, I say. And it's like, I've been looking at ZeniMax's portfolio of games and like studios. So they have Bethesda Game Studios, ZeniMax Online Studios, they have Software, should I say id Software, Arcane Studios, which is now Lion, Machine Games, and the other studios they shut down. Now, if you look at the past decade and beyond, really, Bethesda's main games is Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and Elder Scrolls Online. Basically, everything else, almost everything else by Bethesda, doesn't really sell that well, right? You have Doom by id Software, and you have Wolfenstein by Machine Games, but in the past like seven years ago or so, Bethesda tried to pivot towards online live service games. So Fallout 76, live service game. But even after the game came out, they introduced a subscription service to Fallout 76. And Logan, can you remember the reaction online to Fallout 76's subscription service?
People went thermonuclear about it.
Yeah, people lost their marbles. Like, people were like, oh, so I've bought your game and now I have to pay a monthly subscription for, basic necessities such as the camping kit and all that stuff, which you can get a lot of that stuff for free now. If people don't know, open your Xbox Game Pass perks in the app. There's a bunch of Fallout 76 stuff there. Just claim it. So anyway, there's the subscription service for Fallout 76, which wasn't received well. Then they put out, what was it called? The Wolfenstein game with the twins. They basically made a live service game out of Wolfenstein, and it just didn't work. Nobody bought it, and everyone that made content about it or talked about it, it was received horrifically, like, bad. It was a bad game. And then there was so much blowback on Bethesda moving from single player games that they start doing this like campaign marketing with Linda Carter, Wonder Woman, talking about how single player is important. And then in that whole time, Bethesda was wanting to be bought up because, again, the games Bethesda put out are very expensive to make. Your Elder Scrolls, your Fallouts, your Dooms and all that stuff. Very expensive games, very risky games. So, like, if Bethesda puts out an Elder Scrolls game and it doesn't sell the 10 millions or whatever they need, like they have done in the past, like, it would end Bethesda. So, like, they were wanting to get bought up, and Microsoft picked them up. And I've seen over the past several hours, people are blaming Game Pass, and people are now saying that Game Pass isn't sustainable because, one of the benefits of Game Pass is that they can have these risky games in. I hate to be the bearer of this obvious news. That's not how everything works. There's these corporate heads at the higher ups at Microsoft. No matter how cool it is to have these very different games in Game Pass, which works for the service, at the end of the day, these bean counters have the last say. Doesn't matter how much Phil Spencer or Matt Booty or Sarah Bond says, hey, this studio has this to offer. These annoying high-up suits have the last say, and they don't really talk about people and treat them as human beings. They're just numbers and dollar signs. And that's scary, and that's just like, that's what corporate is. And it's like, it's awful, excuse me, it's awful to say, but like, all this stuff is just dollars. It's sickening, really. The whole game industry at the minute is a mess. We've talked about this before. The AAA space is very expensive. And like, games are costing $100 million. Like 200, like The Witcher 3, I'll put it like this. The Witcher 3 cost about $75 million. And It's one of the best games ever made. Visually, it still looks amazing. And their next Witcher game is projected to be around $400 million. Like, think of the jump of that, right? That is insane. So, like, you have Microsoft, and yes, they do quote unquote have endless money, but they really don't. These game studios, no matter, like, Amazon is one of the biggest companies on the planet, and they can't support their own MMOs with content. Like, having infinite money doesn't solve anything because it's the bean counters that are in charge of this stuff. And it's like, it's really bad that this has happened. Is it the end of Microsoft and Xbox, shall I say? I keep saying Microsoft, but Xbox, it's not. It's just that it's a very unfortunate story, very unfortunate thing that's happened at a very weird time. Because, like, let's be honest again, January was rough for gamers, basically anyone that liked Xbox, because of the reaction online to rumors. And then when in February, Microsoft said their piece in the whole Bethesda business update, shall I say, people went livid online, even though people were already freaking out about rumors. And it's like, we finally had 2 months to calm down. People are like, oh wait, the sky didn't fall, so we'll get back onto, talking about games and stuff. And like, this news dropping 2 weeks before their first AAA game of the year, Hellblade 2 launches, and a month before their game's showcase, like, it was not needed. Like, hopefully everyone that's lost their jobs lands on their feet soon. But like, from a community standpoint and from a fan standpoint, like, I get why fans are worried, but I think that the reaction online is like, gamers overreact about anything, but especially when it comes to Microsoft, right? And it's like, over this past several months, look at all the developers and studios that have been closed down, right? Take-Two literally prints money with GTA Online. They may as well have a printing press for dollars, right? They make billions every month just off GTA Online. It's sickening, really. And they shut down multiple studios, and several projects have been cancelled, right? One of the most profitable game companies on the planet have axed games and fired people, right? Which is crazy. Like, as far as I know, Take-Two, like, they technically make more money than Microsoft and Sony, just off like GTA and all that stuff. And that's sad, but nobody's angry. Nobody's reporting about it like this. Sony laid off a bunch of studios. Again, nobody's really bothered by that. Earlier in the year, they shut down Deviation Games. They shut down Fire Sprite Studios. A few years ago, they shut down Japan Studio, which was a big deal because they made Gravity Rush. Pixel. They also shut down London Studio. They ended support for their VR headset, which costs more than their console. Nobody online was talking about it. And by the way, Jeff Keighley, that wouldn't talk about the Sony layoffs, he was talking about the Xbox layoffs today.
I'm shocked.
Yeah. Very fair, by the way, Jeff. Very fair. And like, Embracer, they've been making horrible business decisions. Like, Embracer bought like 120 studios, and they were relying on a Saudi Arabia deal going through for, I think it was like $2.4 billion. It fell through, and then their overhead for all their studios was way too much, so now they've started shutting down studios. They've merged studios. They've sold off IP, I believe, and they're going to continue to sell off studios when necessary. So it's like the AAA game space at the minute, or the game industry, is messed up. Absolutely messed up. And it's not an Xbox issue, it's a game industry issue. This has been going on for way too long. Something has to change. And like, I've talked about this before, I think there's going to be some sort of game crash in the next 2 years. Now, I don't think, like, Microsoft, Sony, all of a sudden not going to have games to sell people. Like, no. People will still have stuff to play, but I think the output we're going to see from studios and publishers it's going to be way less than what people are used to. The development costs have gone up for these games. People are now tying hours, the length of games, should I say, to dollars. Right? Games cost more than ever. People want longer games because they want to get their money's worth, and I understand that. So that's why everything is open world now. We don't get linear games anymore. So now, like, think of your favorite franchise that was linear. Chances are it's open world now, or semi-open world. Like we were just talking about Resident Evil. Resident Evil 9 is probably going to be a damn good game, but they move into open world. Why? So they can justify $70 and have this 100 hour game. Um, like Logan, we've talked about the whole like possible game crash thing, but like this whole Microsoft laying off studios and people, like this is an industry wide thing.
Yeah, I mean, just rewind to last year when we were in the midst of the FTC trial for the ABK to get the acquisition to the finish line, and how they had Amy Hood and other people testify in court under oath about financials. And, like, to summarize and to be blunt, like, they have to be profitable to justify their existence and to keep afloat at Microsoft. Like, they are not a charity. They are running a cold hard business, and they're trimming margins as a gaming crash kind of looms. They're trimming margins, they're shedding excess weight that is less profitable, and they're going to tried and true methods and less risky endeavors and things that they value more, maybe either from, even if it's maybe not a financial sense, like maybe it helps brand image, or has some power to it that is tangible. They are going to that, and like Phil even said, like, I have to be able to justify decisions I make to people above me. Like, we all think, for all the people who are calling for Phil's head basically and other stuff, like, to me, I think this one above him. That's my guess. I don't know that obviously for sure, but my guess is this came from higher up at Microsoft, because you know Xbox was not quote minor leagues, but like kind of compared to sports, like they were like a smaller franchise, or in a smaller town or whatever, and they had a certain budget and they were working with things, and then they got a huge influx of capital and influx of resources, and they got bumped up to major leagues, or a higher tier. But now there's a lot more expectations, and there's a lot more they have to justify, and but that also comes with eyes and attention and management that you probably didn't have entirely before. So it's got good and bad. Xbox being able to be given $70 billion to go buy Activision Blizzard was obviously awesome. Like, cool, we get the money, we can go do this, and we can buy this game stuff. But a $70 billion investment, you better be bringing home the bacon with that, or we're gonna have to make some decisions. So my guess is this is a wave of some decisions. You know, they you have to keep things going at a certain rate, and they're just doing that. Like you said, Take Two makes so much money off shark cards alone. It is ludicrous. And they just axed two award winning smaller studios that were loved, who made great games, because, it just wasn't cutting it. And, as much as gamers, hate it and moan about it, cry about it, everything justifiably so. I hate layoffs and cuts too. But from a cold business standpoint, it's like it's not a charity. I wish games could be crowdfunded and be like a, just community art projects, but video games and like just put out there for everyone to enjoy and love. And it's like we get to experience them, experience the wonderful and beauty of this art and enjoy it and share it with others. And they were just put out there for enjoyment. But it's not sunshine and giggles down this road. They have to be able to, you know, do what has to be done financially. So I hate it, but it is the way it is. And it's like you can be mad about it and be mad at the leaders who do it, but it it's just how the system works.
Yeah, while we keep talking about this whole is there going to be a AAA game crash? One of the reasons I keep talking about AA games is because I think that you have these developers, they taking these risks. Like I always talk about Focus Entertainment. They are basically a publisher of AA games with AAA quality. The games they put out is
Mhm.
so good. And Nacon now put out a big AA games like RoboCop Rogue City is a AA game, and it's probably the best looking game that came out last year. Like, and it's amazing. And there's so many like AA games coming out in the future that look really cool. I keep talking about these interesting games I find on Twitter and on YouTube because I want more people to know about them. Jump Ship, new sci-fi game, AA game, AAA quality. A new game called Kingmakers coming to Xbox, AA game, AAA quality. And like there's so many interesting AA games coming out, and like I honestly think that Microsoft and Sony should try and put more focus on AA games. Like they've got I'll mainly speak about Microsoft here because I don't know what Sony's working on, but like Microsoft have like 20 AAA games in development, right? Like insane, and the stuff that hasn't even been announced yet. But like I think that as an industry, people need to maybe support AA games more. Like Hi-Fi Rush was a AA game, and there's nothing wrong with the game being AA. But I don't know, and I've also talked about this before. Like Logan, have you noticed? And I've asked you this before, but I need to say it again. Like, have you noticed how like these little indie games like Vampire Survivors, like made by one person, can get like nominees at these award shows? AAA games get these like nominees and stuff and awards, but none of these media outlets ever talk about AA games.
Yeah, there's a big stigma on them for some reason. It's kind of like the whole middle child syndrome kind of thing. It's like, the oldest or the youngest and then there's the middle kid. It's ridiculous. Is I Some of honestly my favorite games of the past year have been double A games. That there are a lot of really good ones. Like Scars Above is a great example. It was either Prime Matter or Focus Home. I can't remember which one. But one of those publishers that makes really, really good double A games. Um and that was one I really enjoyed. And it's weird. It's like they get a stigma of Eurojank or um like, well, look at the eyes of the character or the facial animations are a little iffy or there's some mechanical quirks to the title or they're a little rough around the edges or something to where you can tell it's a smaller team that developed it versus like a GTA experience where you have like some unseemly horde of developers working on some project to crank it out to the nth degree and make sure everything is crystal perfect before you put it out there. So I just it is weird that they get overlooked. And you mentioned Vampire Survivors. Like, I love that game, Bro Tato. I love these indie games. The indie scene is killing it lately, and the double A scene, I think, is a big part of it as well. And I do think more people should pay attention to it because, frankly, I think there's a lot more creativity in the double A scene and in the A scene, like the indie games, than the vast majority of the triple A scene right now. Just just being blunt, I think that's the way it is.
No, you're right. Like we've heard from these publishers and executives that in the AAA space we should expect less innovation, less risk. But you have these AA games and indie developers actually taking risks. Vampire Survivors is a weird one because like one of the game mechanics was apparently designed by someone that used to work in a casino. So like that's what makes its addictive nature addictive. And it's not littered with microtransactions. It's just to get you to continue to play the game over and over and over again. And Vampire Survivors, like I think Vampire Survivors won Game of the Year at the BAFTA Awards, like over Elden Ring, like crazy. Um, that, and we were talking about before, like Logan, like those studios that Take Two's laid off. Like there's a game that launched in Game Pass a few months ago called Rollerdrome. That studio got shut down, and they won multiple BAFTA awards. Like it's crazy. Well, why am I going to loop this back to like Tango and all the other Bethesda studios? Like, it's a game industry issue that's going on at the minute. It's affected Sony. It's affected Microsoft. Nintendo, they are clearly in their own little universe, where this stuff doesn't affect them. We just need things to get better. I think Microsoft's going to be fine, right? They have a strong year ahead for first party content. They get Call of Duty marketing back on their platform. They have Call of Duty going to be in Game Pass, which is that's going to be huge for Game Pass in general. There's a lot of huge releases for Game Pass this year and on Xbox. And by the way, every time there's a big falling out with Microsoft, what they've done and the fans, I always say this one particular thing that people are like, I'm thinking about leaving Xbox, and I don't know if any more games are coming. Now, if you pay attention to my channel and my Twitter, you'll know that I post about upcoming games. I have a database of games, a long list of games, big games, and middle-sized games that are coming to Xbox all the way up through to 2028, right? So the worrying I see online is very unnecessary. It's just some bad news happens, people freak out, and this is their only way of dealing with it. And I hate using the word cope, but it is a way of people coping with it. People get angry. They try and be. They don't try and be rational. People say like, "Oh, Microsoft's going to be the new Sega." Like, do you know, Microsoft will never be in that situation. Sega, the whole Dreamcast thing that happened back in the day, that was a messy thing for a bunch of different reasons. And it's kind of saddening that people in the game industry, I see people that working at IGN and other media outlets, like they really want to push this narrative, like, oh yeah, Microsoft should go third party. This is going to be the end of them, and we see it on a daily basis. I've seen it today by multiple high-profile people in the game industry saying things like, oh, this is Xbox's end and stuff. Like, no, it's not. It's this narrative people are pushing. And, we saw during the FTC court case that people don't want monopolies, but people really are okay with them if it was Sony. Sony's been the industry darlings for 20 plus years, despite the fact they don't take care of their legacy titles. They treat their fan base like crap. They really do. People give Microsoft a hard time because they deserve it a lot, but at least Microsoft are relatively good towards their fan base. The whole Helldivers 2 situation thing that just happened. People don't know about the PlayStation 4's roadmap for this year or beyond. The what do you call it? The mid-gen upgrade that's coming this year for PlayStation. There's not really any need for it, and people are going to fork out another £600 for a console they don't think they don't actually need, but they're going to buy it anyway, which is going to inflate Sony's numbers. Like, it's one of the reasons why I hate the talk about the install base of consoles. I know people that have bought 6 Switches, so that goes towards Nintendo's count of like 100 plus million, and it's just weird. I don't like the whole talk about that. But anyway, back to my point. I've been rambling. Microsoft's going to be fine. but they do need to know that messaging is key. Microsoft's biggest, their Achilles heel in general is messaging, right? Be it the whole thing that happened in January, where we had to wait till February for their business update. They have their executives completely go off Twitter every time something bad happens, when they used to have Aaron Greenberg come out and say something immediately. Doesn't matter if it was good or bad, big or small. Aaron Greenberg would deny it or say something to control the PR. Microsoft has a horrendous PR nightmare on their hands, despite the fact that they have a first-party lineup this year. They have a summer showcase this year. They have Hellblade just around the corner, and they have all the Activision Blizzard stuff coming to Game Pass. Despite all that, Microsoft are still getting hated on, despite the fact that they have everything better going for them this year over Sony, but that won't matter in the end because perception is reality, and the perception is Microsoft's in a bad spot. They aren't, but the way things are going, like open Twitter right now, people are losing their marbles. Do you know most people that don't use social media have no idea any of this is going on? By the way, those people, they live a peaceful life. They have no idea. It must be bliss. But anyway, it's people overreacting. I'll just put it that way. Logan, have you got anything else to say on the topic before we move on?
No, just that it'll be alright. It's not the end of Xbox, it's not the end of everything. Just like those other rumors that were earlier. About, third party or porting stuff. Like, I will say that, again, this isn't a report, but my hunch is that you remember when they announced the first 4 games that were going multi-platform,
Yeah.
or first 4 or 5, whatever they were, and then like Tango and Ghost or Hi-Fi Rush was randomly in there, and it kind of seemed out of place. What if that was a last ditch effort to see if if the IP would just sell enough on PlayStation to, you know, do something, or maybe it was milking it for whatever it's worth. It's just, I don't know. In hindsight, I just kind of revisit that and go, that it just, I don't know, it adds another layer to that decision about how that one was randomly in there.
I mean, it's a good point. Like Sea of Thieves has been popping in the sales for PlayStation, but I've not seen anyone post about Hi-Fi Rush at all. And whenever Final Fantasy gets brought up for Xbox, you'll always see these people say that they should put these games on Xbox if there's resources. And you've got to wonder like how much resources went into Hi-Fi Rush for PlayStation, especially considering no one's talking about it. Like nobody's even buying it to hate on Microsoft, saying, "Hey, I've got your games on my console." Like I haven't seen any of that. Nobody has bought and played Hi-Fi Rush in my feed on PlayStation. So, like, maybe that was a waste of money. Maybe that hurt them. Like, it'll be one of those things that we'll find out about a year from now or something in a book. But, yeah. But, and by the way, I've seen a lot of hate thrown towards actual people from Microsoft. Like, you do realize these are also people, like, sending them threats and stuff. That's just, no, don't do that. It's uncalled for, unnecessary. As awful as this situation is, people have lost their jobs, but being like that online towards other people, it's just uncalled for. Anyway, we'll move on. Last negative thing of tonight, which should be good. Perfect Dark. Perfect Dark has had a weird development cycle. Jeff Grubb is apparently coming out and talking about how messy the development is. But if you remember correctly, we actually heard these rumors, I think, about a year and a half ago. You have the initiative, which is built up from a team of industry veterans, but they also have Crystal Dynamics working on the game. Crystal Dynamics basically excel in third-person action-adventure games, but this game's going to be a first-person game with parkour and stuff. And ever since that was announced, I thought, great, they have industry talent working on this game. But we've been hearing for like a year and a half via rumors. Again, it's just rumors that maybe everything isn't as good as we hope it is when it comes to the development of the game. Honestly, I've done some research. I can't find anything negative about the development outside of Reddit rumors. Like, Logan, do you think there's anything going on with Perfect Dark, despite the fact that there's been really nothing?
Um, I don't know. Like, to be honest, like, if I had to put an educated guess, I think it's mainly a lot of people are just kind of angsty and uncertain about a lot of Xbox things lately, and I understand why. They have certainly not done a good job of helping themselves in the PR department lately, and the vibes department. They're doing a bang up job with that. Um, but radio silence from the initiative. Like, I don't think I've seen a tweet from Initiative's account in forever. Like, I don't know. Like, I haven't checked, but it's been a minute. Um, I know Crystal Dynamics is working on Tomb Raider, which has its own stuff right now, and this, and we haven't seen anything since they talked about it and then announced that they were co-developing it. Like, it's been radio silence, which isn't always a bad thing, but I just think when bad news keeps piling up, people start looking for, wait, are there other leaks inside the boat, or the call is coming from inside the house kind of thing, and they start looking for more problems. To me, it feels like that. But, I'm not discounting anybody if they're reporting something or whatever. But nothing I have heard or seen suggests that there's anything majorly abnormal going on.
Yeah, again, we first got that CGI trailer 3 years ago. Like, you've got to think that maybe it's too soon for that. But I think that, and I'm not saying Jeff Grubb is making this up. I'm just saying that dropping negative Xbox stories when there's a negative Xbox atmosphere going around with certain stories, like, it kind of adds fuel to the fire. And like, I've read things in the past, I've heard things from reliable sources that turned out to not be true. So, I mean, until we say something, we won't really know. I do think we could possibly get an update this summer, but hey, we'll see. Now, let's see what else we've got. Okay, I want to talk about this quickly. And I talked about this with Logan briefly before the show started. So, after the summer showcase, which I do believe is going to be very good, Microsoft has to have a good showing. But then again, the past few years, they've also had good shows. So, I've no doubts about their summer showcase. But anyway, the next day, Phil Spencer is going to be doing an interview at IGN, basically talking about the show. And I'll say this now, for the record. I think Phil Spencer doing an interview on IGN the day after their showcase when they're going to announce new stuff is a horrifically bad idea. Like, we don't hear about this stuff from Sony because Sony doesn't really do interviews like that. Nintendo doesn't do interviews like that. But, like, Phil Spencer will be in an interview. He'll be asked certain questions. Like, I guarantee that every single game that's announced there that says Xbox World Premiere exclusive, I bet people from IGN will ask him, is it really exclusive? Or is it just timed exclusive? They're going to ask that for every single game. Every single game. And it's going to be annoying again. But I'll just say this. I don't think Microsoft should be doing interviews at IGN when they are the media outlet that's the harshest towards them. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. Like, it couldn't be any of the media outlets. It couldn't be one of the smaller ones like Windows Central or anything. No, it has to be IGN. And that just baffles my mind. I just, like, Logan, we talked about this briefly, but, like, Phil Spencer doing IGN interviews the day after the showcase, to me, feels really unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you almost feel like someone's a glutton for punishment. Like, it's like, why would you go? Like, I understand IGN is the big dog on the block. I get it. They are the biggest outlet out there. Their eyes and ears are everywhere. People, casuals, all kinds of folks, like hardcore gamers, casuals, whatever, all see their stuff. Like they have a huge net of influence. That being said, a lot of the stuff that comes out has not been exactly the most endearing or positive of Xbox vibes. So you have all that together, and now you have this new controversy, if you want to call it, with the studio stuff and self inflicted stuff. On top of the rumors about the porting and the going third party, whatever, all the stuff building up. And then you're going to have a big showcase. And then you go to IGN for your big interview right after. It just, I get it on one hand, but it, it feels really, really risky. It, it just, it feels like it's potentially setting up for one of those you can't win kind of days on Twitter where you have interviews you get, they try to pigeonhole you or catch you with certain phrases or terms, then they spin back to it and keep revisiting it, and then you have to try to, CYA and bluff your way out of things, or talk about how, well, what I mean is this, or use some vague Jedi mind trick term to try to spin something. Like, to me, this is just, it's not a good idea. I get why you would do an interview after your showcase. Most of the time, for most companies, that would be a great idea because you're like, dude, we just announced all these, badass new titles that we just made, and they're awesome. And we're really excited about them. And we want to talk more about them or highlight some of the news or new consoles or new features or whatever. But when you're the company that keeps, falling on your own face in a pit of spikes about all your PR messaging lately, maybe this isn't a good idea. I don't know. I'm just in agreement with you that I get it, but boy, it's risky, and I think somewhere else might have been a better idea.
Yeah, as we saw back in February, where Phil Spencer said, "Hey, these are the 4 games that are going elsewhere. Don't get any ideas that it means other games are coming." And then 5 minutes later, in an interview with The Verge, he says he's not ruling things out. And by the way, they've always said that, even like before they bought Activision or any of that stuff. Like the whole not ruling things out thing has been Microsoft's mantra for years. So like I wouldn't read too much into that. But yeah, I'm not looking forward to that interview because it'll be pulled apart in some way for fanboy fodder. Anyway, we'll move on. Oh, we have another super chat by Brandon Martin for $2. He says, "At least I'm getting a refund for Redfall DLC." I mean, that is a good thing that people are actually getting refunds to that, because some people bought like the $100 versions with I think it was going to get like 2 extra characters or something. That is some
I
silver.
bought the Steelbook expansion.
Yeah, so like at least you're gonna get, well, if you buy it digitally, you're gonna get something in return. But it's just it's an awful like sticky situation. It's just not good. Anyway, thank you for the $2, Brandon. It's, things can get better. Um, Now we did get something this past week with Starfield news, which was actually very good news. The May update's going to include a the revamped map system. And funny enough, last week on the show we were talking about how bad Starfield's maps were. So they announced this, and that's really good. If you've seen the new video, they actually full on 3D style maps, much like Skyrim. Very detailed maps. You also have 60 frames per second mode. There's also going to be a 40 frames per second mode. So if you have a VRR display, like TV or monitor, that's going to be good. And just like quality of life improvements, which is really good. You're going to be able to respec your character every time you go through the Unity. If you've never played the game, completely ignore the past 10 seconds. And And there's also going to be vehicles coming. Now, not in the May update, but they have confirmed vehicles are coming. So for the first time in basically an Elder Scrolls game or RPG by them that isn't a horse. But yeah, the update looks good, and personally, I can't wait to go back to this. It's had a graphical update since with the lighting model, so like planets and orbits around stars and stuff. Like it has realistic shadows now. So, Logan, what do you think of the whole new update? Because it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff coming to Starfield.
Yeah, I think first of all, the city map is a godsend because we talked about how hideously
Yeah,
awful trying to navigate the cities were. It was like, my goodness, I already don't have the best sense of direction, and now I literally have no help. It's like, you're on your own. But yeah, it just all the other features for, the shipbuilding and inventory stuff and difficulty scalers and accessibility options that they're adding land vehicles, thank the maker. Just some of those planets took a hot minute. We'll just put it that way. So that's great news. I'm super excited for Shattered Space whenever it comes out. Like, I really think that is going to be a major, boom moment for the game and reinvigorate it with a lot of life and hype and momentum. Like, I know most of the ZeniMax Bethesda news we had today was, not positive, but I do think that Starfield is ripe for a second chance arc, and I think it's going to do really well. And this update is just the start.
yeah. I honestly think that the whole Shattered Space thing could be the Phantom Liberty moment Starfield needs. Because personally, I think Starfield is an amazing game. Right? It's just again, it not having the 60 frames thing really bothered people, to the point where people were calling it trash just based on its frame rate. Um, but I think the update this month with all the features and that. By the way, Starfield's maps. I don't know who thought those used to be a good idea. like you have these really complex cities, um, and you have no idea where to go, and just like the way they were all laid out made no sense. Like your map was just this blue like canvas with like some lumps, and you were told, okay, you need to get to this building. Okay, where? Um, but hey, like this could be the moment that Starfield needs. I think like Starfield could just get way bigger. Like they said during the interview that Starfield Shattered Space is going to be quote unquote massive. So like this could be like again the Phantom Liberty of this game. But it's an exciting time for Starfield fans because while you do have this contingent of people that are just hating on the game, you have a PC gamer for some reason they have it out for this game, and I don't know why. Like they really do not like Starfield for some reason. Maybe they didn't
Weren't
get.
they not given a code?
They may
Wasn't Is that why they're mad?
they may have been, but like, just like the vitriol from them over Starfield, it's like really sour. You can tell like they salty for some reason, and maybe you're right. Maybe it was about the review code thing, but none of these outlets, by the way, are bloody entitled to a review code. Some reviews have told me this that they don't like when I say that, but nobody on earth is entitled to a review code. They're just not, right? Especially if you're a big Mayday outlet. I'm sorry to say, you can afford to buy a copy, right? I I don't really know how the review process works for big media outlets. I've applied for reviews. I've had review codes before, and sometimes I turn them down. But for Starfield, like they didn't give them out to certain media outlets that just attack everything they do. And to me, that's perfectly fine. It makes sense. Why would you give them the ability to make money off your game? Maybe I'm being petty, but hey, if you're a media outlet and you tend to put out a news article every day that's basically bashing anything Microsoft does, maybe don't give them a review code. It just is what it is.
I completely agree. It's like how Warner Brothers handled you know, Squad Game that came out. Won't use the first word because of phrasing on the channel, but you know what I mean. The DC Comics game and how it was not well received, but some outlets, went above and beyond saying it wasn't their favorite game. We'll just put it that way, and made it very harsh terminology and just blatantly trashed the thing and didn't really give it much of a chance. And then lo and behold, WB did not seem to have great vibes towards them afterwards, and seemed going forward that good chance that affects things. Like, to me, that just seems to be common sense and courtesy. Like, you can say a game is awful or bad or whatever, but there is a decorum you can use, and some people use it and some don't, and I understand them basically going, no matter what we do, this certain outlet or that one or whatever, just they find something wrong with everything, or they criticize everything, or they blatantly clickbait and trash stuff, so we're just not going to give them codes anymore. If they want to spend their own money and criticize our product, then joke's on them.
Yeah. And I don't ever like talking about the whole media outlet thing on the channel because some people just say I've got a tinfoil hat on, but like I have legitimate points. It's like you can like especially Metro, right? All you have to do is just search Metro in the word Xbox. You can see this long list of like crappy articles of them attacking them, and it's so out of place. Um, I just saw a comment by a 13K, and we need to talk about this because I think it's important enough people reacted to it online. Is that Jez Corden from Windows Central? Great guy. I've been talking to him on Twitter for maybe a decade now. Uh, he posted a thing on Discord, and it was basically his opinion of what Microsoft's going to do in the future. Now, when I saw the word opinion, I just thought, okay, that's his opinion. The gaming community and media outlets took that as a fact and ran with it. Now, anyone can have an opinion about whatever they want when it comes to anything. It's not factual. It's not news. I've always hated the idea of opinion pieces being news, and people just ran with it. And then later on Twitter, he was saying, "No, this isn't happening. That's just his opinion." I think it was just another overreaction by gamers. My opinion, again, just my opinion. I think Microsoft isn't going multi-platform for everything. I do think they are for some games. For instance, MMOs. Bethesda is currently working on multiple MMOs. I do think those will be multi-platform. I do think the occasional smaller game like a Pentiment style game, I do think those will be multi-platform. But I don't think your Gears, your Indiana Jones, your Halo, your Forza, your Fable, basically everything else that's in development that we know of, uh, I do think those will be exclusive. But again, that's my opinion, and people can run with that if they want. But I just thought it was a bit silly that people took that as fact and then just start making stories about it to the point where the next day people start saying the Gears of War remaster collection is apparently going to be multi-platform based off nothing. By the way, these posts always happen around these made up rumors. Like Jez Corden from Windows Central had an opinion, and people ran with it. It was an opinion. That's all it was. And he was getting hate for it online, which I didn't agree with. Like, it's just an opinion. Like Logan, you obviously saw that, right? People overreacted over to something that it was unnecessary.
Yeah, I agree. The whole thing just it blew up kind of like as we saw today. The whole community's been on a hair trigger about everything, like walking on eggshells and like, cat on a tin foil roof. It's just like something just happens and then all of a sudden they jump to conclusions, or they get super, angry or angsty, or like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, without, contextualizing things or actually reading things fully out or getting more information or considering where it came from or what it actually is. Jazz is a good dude. It was his opinion, based on what he believes or feels about what he thinks might happen or would happen in the future. It was not him making a report, as he has said many times on his show, on him and Rand's show, that if they have something, quote, to report, like actual documentation or actual factual things that they can back up with a whole bunch of stuff, they will put it into a big article for Windows Central or something like that. And then if you see that, you go, okay, this 100% is, comes from the top, like, or source inside sourcing something big time. This isn't just, this is my reading of the tea leaves or how I feel like the vibes are. Like, that's what it was. Someone just honestly asked him, like, hey man, what do you think is going to happen? Or how do you feel about this? And he was honest. I personally don't agree with his opinion, but you know what? He's entitled to his opinion. I'm entitled to mine. Everybody's entitled to their opinions. It's how this works. And, he expressed that. What I will say, and I'll defend him, is I think it was a pretty crummy move for your own community Discord for somehow it to get out from your community Discord when you're just having a casual chat with one of your community members. Someone screen grabs it and then posts it on forums and online and causes hysteria. That to me was a really crummy move. Like, and then it blew this whole thing up and outlets are reporting, clickbaiting, all that. All of it over a simple conversation with someone in their community Discord that somebody was like, you know what, I'll just share this. And yeah, that's my biggest takeaway from it, honestly.
I think again, it's gamers overreacting about stuff. Um, you know, like I I have to. I tell people I have this very calm demeanor because I do. Like, I not really much can set me off, right? Like, to the point where people have thought I'm high, just because I'm that mellow about stuff. Even about something like like a big topic like this, it's because like it's just video games. We're meant to enjoy them, and it all just boils down to like weird toxicity. Like hell, you have people online stalking me because I prefer to play games on a different plastic box. You have Jez Corden writing an opinion piece and people panic. It's crazy what the gaming space is like online. But again, everything's going to be fine. I hate the fact that I have to say that, but unfortunately, I kind of have to. Um, I just like I put it like this. I have this opinion, and by the way, I've never once hated Mass Effect Andromeda on Twitter. Not once. Ever. Never posted anything negative about it. But I will give my opinion right now, right? My opinion of Mass Effect Andromeda, and why am I talking about Mass Effect? Because I'm giving an opinion. I want to see how far people run with it. Mass Effect Andromeda almost ruined the franchise to the point where they put the franchise on hiatus on my birthday in 2016 or 17 or whatever. And that stung, right? So my opinion is that Mass Effect Andromeda isn't a Mass Effect game, and the fact that people call the next Mass Effect game Mass Effect 5, it's stupid. People want a game that almost ruined the franchise to count. Again, people can run with that, but it's just an opinion. Like, people like that game, whatever. I just don't care. By the way, I could talk for about 2 hours about why I don't like Andromeda, but again, story for another day. I think that people just need to calm down. The whole Tango Gameworks thing, like the Tango one, stings a lot. People know that, but I think people just need to calm down, stop overreacting. It's fine. It's going to be fine. Hopefully, everyone that think about it like this. Think about how the developers feel. Like the developers got laid off. They have to find new work. that is a bad situation in general. It doesn't matter who it is or where they work at. It's a bad situation, and just people, like, seeing people use this as fanboy wars and stuff. Like, I kind of exited that stuff years ago. Like, people using pictures of Phil Spencer to do memes. It's like, I get it, but come on, like, it's just too much. We've had we're now in May. We've had the first few months of this year of people panicking about everything and just going over the top with stuff, and it's just it's really unnecessary. I think gamers just take things way too far, and it's just too much. And plus, I'm trying to be in a positive mood because my birthday is this coming weekend, and I'm trying to stay positive. Anyway, Logan, have you got anything else to say before we close out the show?
No, just stay positive. Things will work out. Um, keep voicing your opinions. Be respectful. Don't harass people, but let them know what you think is acceptable or not. And I will say that I really think a massively goodwill focused showcase would be a great idea for Xbox.
Yeah, no, you're right there because, like, Microsoft, they do need some goodwill for the fans. Like, I put it like this, like, I'm getting happy birthdays in chat. My birthday is on Saturday. By the way, why am I talking about my birthday now? Is because this Saturday is my first birthday that falls on a weekend since the pandemic started. So basically,
Wow,
yeah,
that's crazy.
yeah, basically every weekend, every birthday I've had since the pandemic is like something bad's happened. Either we're in lockdown in 2020. What happened in 2021? Oh yeah, we're in lockdown again. Basically, nowhere was open. 2022, I was sick. 2023, nobody was available because everyone's having kids and getting married now, which is like good on them. But my birthday, damn it. And this year, finally, I get to do something, which is nice. And that's this Saturday. But yeah, everyone just needs to stay calm. Like, it's a good time to be a gamer because there's so many cool games coming. But like, people need to stop overreacting to stuff. Like the Tango stuff, it's negative. People don't like it. People will move on from it. And like Logan said, we do need some good news, even if it's like a little bit of good news. Like, Microsoft's been low key kind of like hyping their summer showcase for months and months and months now, and they clearly have a big show installed. However, just something good. Like, Microsoft, I prefer their console, I prefer their games and ecosystem. They have a habit of putting their foot in their mouth, and there's always some bad news story every other week, and nobody comes out on social media to correct it because they all go into hiding now for some reason. One piece of good news. That's all Microsoft has to do between now and the summer showcase. One piece of good news. It could be maybe some BC stuff, some Game Pass stuff. Then they've got
Please.
Then they've got yeah. We really want some backwards compatible stuff. Then Hellblade is out in 2 weeks. That's going to get people's minds off all this stuff. And then there's the big summer showcase, and also all the other third-party showcases. But anyway, hopefully someone from Microsoft will listen. Just one piece of good news, and that will alleviate. Like, everyone's seen that meme, right? Xbox is dead, or Xbox is back. Xbox is dead, Xbox is back. I said that wrong, but you know what I mean. I've been talking all day. Anyway, everything's going to be fine. People just need to stop overreacting and maybe not pay attention to the clickbait you see out there. Anyway, everyone in chat's been awesome. We will be back the same time next week, unless anything bad happens. I doubt it. I made a video about the 10 biggest games coming to Xbox this month. YouTube isn't always the best at sharing this out. The link is in the description if you want to watch that. There's 10 really cool games coming to Xbox this month. So lots of different genres covered. So that's always appreciated. Our social links are also in the description down below, where we cover gaming. Logan likes to talk about sports a lot, and well, I try to not post memes that upset gamers too much now. Anyway, again, everyone in chat's been awesome. Back next weekend. I should say back next Tuesday. We're out, everybody. Peace.